Hey everyone, I get some questions now and then about at what price would I consider selling some of my Bitcoin, or now and then someone will ask me what is the price I'm secretly waiting for to sell my Bitcoin. The answer is there isn't one, and you're probably thinking, wait, of course I would say that. If I'm waiting for some secret price to sell Bitcoin, then I obviously wouldn't tell you right now on Facebook Live. Well, you need to understand why there is not a price I would consider selling my Bitcoin, and then it will make sense of why I'm not planning to sell my Bitcoin at any price. Okay, so the first is, when you sell any asset, you end up with another asset, right? So if I sell my Bitcoin, I end up with US dollars, but that means I have to want US dollars. And I don't see any reason I would ever sell Bitcoin to get US dollars. Why would I sell something that is absolutely finitely scarce, like Bitcoin, where there will only ever be 21 million? Why would I sell something that is completely and totally scarce for something that the government can print out of thin air? It just makes no sense to do that. And so let's assume I was planning to sell Bitcoin at some price. Well, then what am I going to do? Sit on US dollars and watch it evaporate? Or try to buy back into Bitcoin at a lower price? Well, first of all, trying to sell it at a high price and buy back in at a low price is an absolute fool's errand. So I have met, in the process of going to multiple times to the big national conference in the United States for Bitcoin in Miami. Typically it's in Miami. It's going to be in Las Vegas coming up later this year, but it's been Miami the last 2 years. And Satoshi Roundtable, which is in Dubai, often in Dubai. It also moves around, but I've been a couple times to Satoshi Roundtable in Dubai. At those conferences, I've met a gazillion people that have a lot of Bitcoin. And 0% of them, zero. I have literally never met a single person that has successfully sold Bitcoin at or near an all-time high and then bought it back at or near a low. It just doesn't happen. Nobody can pull that off. Now, I've met a bunch of people who have tried to do that, and inevitably they sold, and then the price went way up, and then they bought back in at a higher price, and basically they missed out on upside rather than getting more upside. They actually missed out on upside. I've absolutely met people that have done that. And the reverse. I've met people that, they bought when it was high and then they sold when it was low. And so they've lost money on Bitcoin. I talked to one person who was like, yeah, I bought Bitcoin. I bought $300,000 worth of Bitcoin, and then it went down to $100,000, and I didn't understand why, and I just sold it. And of course, had he held on to it, it would have been worth millions. But he didn't bother to figure out why he owned what he owned and if he should have owned what he owned. So the core problem with selling Bitcoin is you have to sell it for something. And if you sell it for US dollars, that trade makes no sense. Same if you buy anything else with it, it makes no sense. So what would I ever consider buying with Bitcoin? Well, things that my family actually needs. So I try to avoid debt. I don't owe anyone anything. I have zero debt. My house is paid for. My cars are paid for. Everything's paid for. I don't have any debt. Now, if I did have debt, rather than if it was at a reasonable interest rate, or probably any interest rate, I would probably buy Bitcoin with extra cash and then slowly pay off the debt. So I'm not saying, if I had debt, it's not like I would necessarily automatically pay it off instead of buying Bitcoin. I'd probably just buy Bitcoin. But since I've been debt-free for a long time now, it's super painful to go back in debt. So I'm just not going to go back in debt. I just psychologically, I've been out of debt long enough that I'm just not going to go back in debt, which means if my family needs stuff, then I've got to pay for it somehow. And since, my assets are in Bitcoin, then that's where it's got to come from. So I have spent Bitcoin over the years on things like we built an expansion on our house. And so I had to liquidate some Bitcoin to do that. But that was not driven necessarily by any specific price. It was just driven by the fact that, okay, based on my assets, can I afford to build this addition? Yes, I can. The Bitcoin that I bought that I'm going to use to, build this addition is up by, 100% or 200% or whatever. Basically, it's more than doubled in value. Therefore, the addition on my house is going to cost half of what it would otherwise have cost if I were sitting in US dollars. And so I liquidate a little bit of Bitcoin, and I, do something that improves the life of my family. The same is going to be true. My oldest son turns 16. He's 15 now. Turns 16 in April. And so my family is going to need another vehicle. And I think the way it's going to play out is that my son is going to end up with our family van. he's got to prove to me that he's, can go at least a year or two without wrecking it, without, before he gets something nicer. And, which means it's going to leave me with no vehicle because my wife drives our Honda Pilot and I am driving the family van, the 2010 Honda Odyssey that's 15 years old. I am driving it right now. It's got 220,000 miles on it, 220000. So 220,000 miles on the family van, which I am currently driving. My wife drives our 2017 Honda Pilot, which I don't know how many miles it has on it, but it's starting to get up there as well. And then my daughter drives a Toyota Corolla. So we need another vehicle. So I'm probably going to end up with a Tesla because I think I do way too much texting and driving and generally just constantly interacting with my phone. And Tesla's got full self-driving. And so as long as you generally pay attention to the road, it will drive you anywhere you want to go. And so it feels like for my own safety, when I'm driving around, I would rather it be driving me around because computers are way better at driving. Tesla is, when people are driving a Tesla, the average is one car wreck out of every 6 million miles driven. When people are driving a not Tesla, the average is one wreck out of like 300,000 miles driven. So it's like, I don't know, 5% is likely that you're going to have, or whatever that math is, 300,000 versus 6 million. You're just way, way, way more likely to have a wreck in a non-Tesla than in a Tesla. If you've got Tesla with full self-driving turned on, it's just highly unlikely you're going to have a wreck. Tesla's got incredible accident avoidance technology. Okay, so, come April of next year, I'm going to need a car, and it's probably going to be a Tesla Model Y. Okay, so a couple thoughts there. One, if I was super tight on Bitcoin and it was going to require me to liquidate, a lot of my Bitcoin, then I would probably finance it. But because I'm not in that situation and the Bitcoin I would be buying a Tesla for, the whole thing's probably going to cost $60,000 and I'm going to pay for it with Bitcoin that probably cost me, I don't know, $20,000. So I've been saving up extra Bitcoin to buy, hopefully a Tesla. And again, I could finance it, but if it was going to take sort of a major hit to my Bitcoin, I probably would. But in this case, my psychological benefit of not being in debt, of just being completely debt free, not owing anyone any money at all, means I will probably buy a Tesla. I'm waiting for Elon Musk to let you buy them with Bitcoin. Back in 2021, very briefly, he let people buy Teslas with Bitcoin. And then he said that they stopped doing that because of a long, stupid story that cost Elon Musk $1 billion. But anyway, he said at some point he'd turn it back on. So as soon as Tesla will once again allow you to buy Teslas with Bitcoin, I will probably do that in April of next year. And I think over the next 6 months, they're probably going to turn back on the ability to buy a Tesla with Bitcoin. So again, that would involve me liquidating, let's call it $60,000 worth of Bitcoin and buying a Tesla with it. I wouldn't even liquidate it. Hopefully they'll let me just straight up buy it literally with my phone using Bitcoin, to buy a Tesla at the dealership in Rankin County. And if they will let me do that, that's what I intend to do. Okay. So again, if that was going to take a massive bite out of my Bitcoin stash, then I would try to finance it, or I would borrow against my Bitcoin, or I would start getting very creative. But in this case, psychologically, just like with the the sort of minor upgrade to our house that I paid for with Bitcoin, I would do the same thing. The psychological benefit to me of being completely and totally debt-free and owing nobody anything is worth parting with a tiny little, with a portion of my Bitcoin in exchange to improve the life of myself and my family. Now, you're probably thinking, well, that's ridiculous, because why would you buy a Tesla? Let's say Bitcoin's at 140, let's use round numbers, 60,000. Let's say Bitcoin's at 120,000 a coin, 50% higher than it is now. It's 120,000 a coin, and it cost me half a Bitcoin, 0.5, one half of one Bitcoin, 50% of a Bitcoin to buy a Tesla. Why on earth would I do that? Because if it doubles again, which I think it will, then I've essentially bought a Bitcoin, Tesla that instead of costing $60,000 cost $120,000. It's like, yeah, but technically the Tesla's costing me $20,000 because, the Bitcoin I'm using to buy it tripled in price already. So, by that logic, I wouldn't buy anything. By that logic, I would be leveraged to the gills with debt. I would not buy a single thing to improve my life or those around me. and I would just sit on Bitcoin because everything's getting cheaper over time. Well, that's true, but we're also here to live. We're also here to improve the lives of ourselves and our family. And, you know, if I'm in a position where I don't have any US dollars to buy stuff anymore, which is basically where I am with, you know, my total liquid assets in Bitcoin at about 97% right now, since that's where I am, you know, I don't have a lot of choice but to liquidate some Bitcoin or go into debt, and I'm not going to go into debt. And so I don't have a choice but either to not buy a vehicle or buy a lot cheaper vehicle. But again, in this case, for my own safety and for everything else, I kind of want to buy a Tesla. So anyway, so there's not, but again, going back to the core question, there is not a price. There is not a price I'm waiting for. It's not like I'm secretly thinking, wow, I'm going to promote Bitcoin all over Facebook, and at some specific price, I'm going to sell it. That is not how it works, because again, you've got to want what you're getting in exchange. The only reason I would part with some Bitcoin to get a Tesla Model Y is because I want a Tesla Model Y. It's because I value a Tesla Model Y more right now than I value 1/2 of one Bitcoin. And hopefully by April of next year, it'll cost less than 1/2 of one Bitcoin, maybe even as little as 1/3 of one Bitcoin to buy a brand new Tesla Model Y 2025 model year with full self-driving. And if so, again, I value that vehicle for my family more than I value somewhere between 1/3 and 1/2 of one Bitcoin. But again, I'm not selling it for US dollars, which I do not value, and I'm not selling it for anything else because I do not want real estate rental income. There's just nothing else I want other than, things that improve my life and my family's life or more Bitcoin. And I've already bought basically as much Bitcoin as I possibly can. So anyway, to again answer the question a bunch of times, there is no price I'm waiting for. I do buy more things for my family when the price of Bitcoin feels higher versus lower, only because I feel more wealthy versus not. But that's not unique to Bitcoin. That's that's universal to any type of asset. When you have a lot of more assets, you tend to feel more wealthier. And you tend to do more things like upgrading some aspect of your house, buying another vehicle for the family, or things like that. But again, I'm not trying to time the market. In this case, my purchasing decision is entirely based on the birthday of my 15-year-old. And he was born, before Bitcoin even had a price. So my purchase decision is dictated not by the price of Bitcoin, but by the price of, by the necessity of family needs. So anyway, so all that to say, my plan is to hold Bitcoin as long as conceivably possible, all the way through whatever the highest peak price is in 2025, and then hold that same Bitcoin all the way through whatever the low price is in 2026, and all the way back up through whatever the high price is in 2027, 2028, in 2029, and then do it all over again on a 4-year cycle. That is my plan, and I see no reason that I would part with Bitcoin for, again, unless I valued something more than Bitcoin, and I certainly don't value US dollars more than Bitcoin, so I would certainly not sell to get US dollars. And if I'm not going to sell to get US dollars, then there's got to be something compelling I want that I value more than Bitcoin. And again, unless I'm improving the life of myself and my family somehow, in a material way that is meaningful to do sooner rather than later, then I'm just going to sit on as much Bitcoin as I possibly can for as long as conceivably possible. So hopefully that helps with as far as my mindset on Bitcoin and how I think about it. And if you have questions, keep them coming. I'll try to record some more videos as I get more questions. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks.